have with us Commodore Vasan, who's director of Chennai Center for China Studies, and he's worked in the Indian Navy and Indian Coast Guard for over 34 years, holding several important command and staff appointments. He is one among the most prominent China affairs experts in India. Welcome, Commodore.
Thank you very much.
Commodore, let's begin this conversation with the status of India-China standoff on the line of actual control, which began 3 years ago.
Yeah,
What is the status of the standoff?
yeah, thank you for that question. It's something that is, something of a great concern to us in India. China seems to be happy with the status quo, notwithstanding the number of meetings that have taken place at different levels, at the military level, at the diplomatic level, at the political level. A lot of conversation has taken place, but nothing has changed. On the contrary, what we have seen is evidence of infrastructure build up on their side, on their side of the LAC. We also try to match them for bit for brick, but that's a long way off, and it drains our economy. So China's calculation must be that they are able to absorb this better, whereas India would be hardly hit, being our size of economy is just 1/5 that of China. And so that's one calculation, and it's also that what happened in Ukraine perhaps has cautioned them on the length of any war and the kind of economic distress that they have to face. So there are serious concerns on this, and I think for the first time, the government of India, the External Affairs Minister, has made it very clear that business cannot be usual. Unless we restore the status quo as in April 19. So, but that is not happening as I can see. So it's hard time on our side, and we need to prepare this. That's why we are looking at many options, including shoring up of our military defense capabilities, our alliances. So all this is something that is work in progress. So, but to sort out this issue, it will take a little more time in my assessment.
So let me interrupt you here and tell our audience, why do you think China is happy with the status quo?
It's like this, it's something, it's like as they say in Hindi and also in some of the Indian languages, it's hot ghee. Neither can you swallow it, nor can you spit it out. So that is the situation they are also in. And also they are driven by a lot of domestic compulsions as of date. They can't be seen as giving in to India's strong position internationally and bilaterally. So the domestic compulsions, the COVID which has hit them recently, which also drove them to shut down Shanghai for more than few weeks, is something that it shows that the internal dynamics are also making them go slow, or even if they had some kind of a ambition to sort out India once for all along the LAC. So this is why they have not been able to do much. So they would rather be happy with the present position where there is no.
Can you please elaborate on domestic compulsions? What are Xi Jinping's domestic compulsions in China?
No, all the China watchers keenly look at the domestic developments. The COVID did not affect the other nations, but it also affected the place from where it originated. In everybody's assessment, it's quite clear that it was Wuhan and China. So it's gone back. Many people say it's a return to the parents. That's what the media says. So the point is that the COVID did go back, and they've been affected. And the zero COVID policy domestically is something that has affected them very, very seriously. When you have a zero COVID policy, it means that you are shutting down families, you are not allowing children to go to schools, you are separating children from parents. So this is creating a certain amount of domestic turmoil. And it's being discussed in Weibo, WeChat, and their forums which are there. And so the government is obviously concerned. While they are trying to, recently they have said that Shanghai is opened up, it has caused economic disruption. If you are in the center of the global supply chain, you need to ensure that your manufacturing, your supply chains and all that are active. So that has been affected. So it has hit China domestically. And also he is trying to consolidate his position, that Xi Jinping, as the leader, undisputed leader. So he's looking at the anointment as the emperor of the Middle Kingdom in this month. So, obviously, do not want anything where they are going to burn their hands and perhaps spoil his chances of being reappointed. There are also reports that not everything is hunky dory between him and his prime minister, but this is media speculation. We do not know how the CCP would look at this. So, this is what I was referring to when I spoke about the domestic compulsions and disturbances, which affect the way they deal with others. They also try to expand their spheres of influence, just as India is trying to do it in Indian Ocean. They are also trying to do it in the Pacific Ocean and also in the Indian Ocean region. So it does bring in a dynamics of power play both in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific region, a confluence of which is being today referred to as the Indo-Pacific.
So, my question is that the because of the war in Ukraine, uh, Russia, China and India seem to be on the same side of the aisle as far as their position on Russia goes, because on the one hand, India has joined Quad, but on the other hand, India remains a part of BRICS. India has joined IPEF, but India has also been neutral in the war in Ukraine. In fact, it abstained from voting in the United Nations on almost, in fact, all votes against Russia. And China has maintained also a similar position vis-a-vis Russia. Are we saying that India and China can actually come to some common ground with which it can resolve issues, and they don't necessarily have to be enemies of each other?
It's a good point that you have made, and a lot of good observations which can be analyzed in detail. As far as our stand on Ukraine is concerned, I think the government of the day has made it very clear that there are issues of dependence on Russian military. That's not the only reason why we abstain from voting. It's also a reason because of the double standards that were applied by the West and US. Now, the specific example of oil and gas. I think the External Affairs Minister made it very clear that the amount of oil or gas that we import, even after this kind of sanctions is concerned, is not even 1% of what the US and the West import. So this clearly demonstrate the double standards that are being applied in terms of how they want India to toe their line. So this was one consideration. The other thing is it's very clear, it's in public knowledge that 60 to 70% of our military hardware, critical military hardware, which is now keeping China at its bay, comes from Russia. Likewise, we are also getting weapons from US, from France, from Israel, other places. So we continue to be a major arms importer. And according to CIPRI, we are number one importer of arms around the world. So we can't be in a situation where any of them are given ample reasons to turn off critical war supplies. So this is one of the primary considerations which is there. Other aspect is which is I think the External Affairs Minister made it very clear during the recent interview with the European counterparts to say that look, what are we talking about? The Europe's war, according to you, is a war that is to be looked at by the world. Whereas if something else is happening elsewhere in other parts of the world, it's not Europe's war. So so this is where he's made it very clear that India continues to follow what's called the strategic autonomy, which has been discussed in many forums, which is that we align with our interests. So what drives interests will compel us to take the decisions one way or the other. So that's what explains how we abstained in the case of the abstention when it was voted. Other point about whether China and India can mend fences because of some of these so-called confluence of ideas in these forums. That's something it's difficult. Not that it's not achievable, but with the hard kind of stand that's taken by China in terms of LAC, they're quite okay with something being resolved with Myanmar based on the McMahon line, but the same McMahon line is anathema to them. So this is again question of what suits them. They would like to keep
So,
this
why
up.
do you think, let me interrupt you, why do you think that China has a very hostile approach towards India and not any other immediate neighbor?
No, I think we are the only big country in South Asia. In fact, the largest economy, and who can be seen by China as a competitor. and also the kind of influence that, despite its economic differential, that it wields in the international arena with the West, with the liberal democracies, it seems to anger China. Of course, the historical reasons of our keeping Dalai Lama with us, the Tibet issue, and also the fact that we did not join the BRI. On the contrary, we even abstained from attending the Belt and Road Forum. So all these have been looked at as something that, where India is not only a competitor but perhaps challenges the position that China would like to occupy. So, despite the fact that we are economically so much more weaker, if we can challenge the might of China, so that obviously that's something which is looked at as a factor of great discomfiture for the leadership in China. So that explains why they would like to toe a hard line.
Now, let me come back to the standoff at the LAC. Despite the standoff, India and China bilateral trade has been going on. Nothing has really changed. In fact, even during the coronavirus pandemic, the trade went on. But we continually see a trade deficit because China doesn't import as much from India. What is it between India and China that prevents China from sharing an equal partnership in trade with India?
Continued imports despite the standoff is because of the supply chains that were established by China for decades. So it became the center of the universe in terms of supplying manufactured goods, APIs, mobiles, high critical components, heavy machinery, electrical goods, you name it, they had become the manufacturing hub of the world. Therefore, it's not only just with India, but it's also with other countries that they continued to hold us to hostage by a simple thing like API. The example which has already been given is that here we're not even able to manufacture what we want unless the APIs are given. At one stage, we are ahead of China. So, this is where, but we find that, India is trying to diversify, and, which is where the resilient supply chain initiative of the Indo-Pacific, the Quad initiative comes in. Because every partner knows that you cannot overnight kick China out of the supply chain mechanisms that it has established assiduously for decades. So, how do you get out? You have to plan for it, which is where you find the usefulness of Quad, where they are investing heavily in terms of trying to get S&T initiatives on their side, exchanges of people on their side. But today, what's happened is that while we are importing heavily from China, we also started improving our relations with USA. In fact, our trade relations with USA are such that they have become number one trade partner with India, as of last count. So obviously, this efforts for diversification of your dependence, if I may use that word, is something that is work in progress. It's not going to happen overnight. So you will see this pattern of our continued import from China for maybe another 5 years or more, depending on how you see the benefits of this diversification, accruing to you in a matter of time. It's not going to happen overnight.
India has joined Indo-Pacific Economic Framework and, in fact, rejected RCEP, which is led by China. What do you think is the future of these two frameworks? Who do you think is going to eventually have the upper hand? It's almost like trade competition of two different blocks. One is led by the US and one is led by China. So where do you see this competition going?
No, China, recently when the IPAF was launched, had a lot of reservations and said this is also going to fizzle out. No, they said the same thing about the Quad when Quad was launched. So I am quite certain that IPF is not something that's going to fizzle out because there are a lot of advantages, but India also has its own challenges. Having walked out of the RCEP, there was no other platform through which it could engage with the Southeast Asian economies. And when you look at the composition of the members of IPEF, you find 7 out of 10 ASEAN members are part of this. 70% of the ASEAN membership is now present in IPEF. So while we continue to talk about bilateral relations, free trade agreements, etc. It will
But
take.
then they are also trading with China. Southeast Asian countries seem to be keeping everyone happy, and there is nothing wrong with that.
Okay, the specific reservations that we have as far as the IPF is concerned, that's from the informed public here, is that would it be something that would only benefit USA? That is a question that's being asked. Mainly because of issues related to data transfer, localization of data, and also the fact that this will result in a lot of business to data-driven companies in USA. This is one concern which is there. But simultaneously, like I said, you are very right in saying that ASEAN countries would like to balance both and get the both. Look at Sri Lanka. That's what they try to do by involving playing the China card in India and India card in China. Have they benefited? I know the answers are there for everybody to see. So, even ASEAN countries now are in a difficult situation. They can't displease China. Therefore, a lot of this will continue to play up. But they are also part of another system that is developing, which is the IPA. So, what it does is it indirectly applies pressure on China. In the process, China may change its behavior, which is good overall. If the code of conduct comes into play because they do not want to displease the ASEAN members, it's good for stability in the Indo-Pacific region. But is that what we are trying to achieve in IPF? Like I said, we are not part of RCEP. We are still trying to see whether we can have FTAs with these countries on a bilateral motion. So IPF gives you some kind of, even if it is data exchanges and data-driven policies, after all, that is the way the future world will be. It will be a digital world. So let's remain relevant in that area where even our digital commerce, being number one in the IT service sector, the digital rules will continue to be applied globally and they'll be more stringent. So therefore, I think we have a certain amount of advantage with reservations. There are many caveats there, that's being identified by the economic experts. I'm not one. But I would like to say that, wherever there are opportunities, we need to be looking at whether it's Quad or whether it's IPF to look at what can it offer than trying to already say from the word go that it will not work in our favor. So I would rather look at it as an advantage and not as a disadvantage.
Let us, in a way, I mean, you have answered my next question even before I asked it, but I'm still going to ask that it seems that the world is now going through another kind of Cold War. We're not calling it Cold War, but it is Cold War because America, despite the fact that America has for a very long time been saying that China's occupation of South China Sea is not acceptable, and despite the fact that it has taken a tough stand on Taiwan, we do not see China holding itself back or changing its behavior, if that is the objective. So, are we saying that even though you're saying that there is an advantage to IPF, there are advantages to all these pressure tactics, but in terms of results, are we seeing any change in China's behavior or any change in Xi Jinping's regime?
China will continue to be on its course, which is already pre-decided that by 2025 it will be a technologically efficient country. By 2049 it will be, something which will be prosperous. And indirectly, what is not said is that they will also be the middle kingdom of the world. So that's something which it's the course. So what Xi Jinping and the party would look at these challenges as impediments that need to be overcome, whether it's Taiwan, whether it's Himalayan ranges where the LAC transgressions have taken place, or whether it is South China Sea, or the challenges that are being now posed by America, because Joe Biden has clearly said that yes, in the case of Taiwan, will militarily intervene. No, I'm not sure whether we can walk the talk. The point is that the message has gone to say that we are not going to sit quiet and let you take over. And China is also learning a lot of lessons from Ukraine. What everybody said was a walkover in 7 days has gone down to 100 days. So it is quite clear that the contours of warfare have changed. So it would like to assimilate the lessons before it ventures into anything else. So let's say its crossfire was Taiwan takeover by, let's say, 2030, for example. That would defer it by another couple of years till it is consolidated its position. On the issue of whether China, does not feel the pinch, I would like to say that it definitely feels the pinch. Remember, Japan put away something like $2 billion for relocation of factories. Vietnam gained. It's part of the ASEAN. 23 countries relocated in Vietnam. So does not China feel the pinch of having lost the labor, having lost the investment from Japan in some of the critical areas where Japan decided to pull out from China? So, it is not that China is not affected. It is that they would like to apply those course corrections using the reserves that they have. The biggest advantage they have is finances. Even the BRI, that is something like $3 trillion or whatever which they amount, is a phenomenal amount of money. And as long as they have countries where the trade deficit is in its favor, it is the money that's available to them through the trade deficit. You know, if you have trade deficit of let's say $80 billion with India, that's the money that goes into the China POK economic corridor. So yeah, they are not short of funds. So wherever, because of the fact that they are well entrenched in the supply chain systems, they continue to rule the rooster. So this is where their courses may not change, but there will be certain amount of modification.
Well, let me come to the neighborhood again. Sri Lanka and Pakistan, especially. What is the status of CPEC, and where do you see China Pakistan relationship going in future? Because as far as in terms of their position, China's position on Kashmir, China's position on some of the issues, in fact, even 370, they took a very pro-Pakistan line. Where do you see that relationship going? One, vis-a-vis CPEC, and second, with respect to India.
China has always held the hand of Pakistan. They have also gone to the extent of saying that it is deeper than the oceans, higher than the sky, and all these poetic terms have been used to describe their relationship. That only indicates that they are willing to go to any extent to ensure that somebody who is inimical to India is sustained, nurtured. That's one card that they can play against us. And also the other aspect of China's interest in Pakistan is strategic, which is also to access Afghanistan and also North Arabian Sea. The Gwadar is all about accessing this and overcoming the Malacca dilemma, which we all have discussed in the past. So, as far as energy security is concerned, Pakistan plays an important role in the energy security dynamics of China, which is why Pakistan is important. In addition, the investments that they are talking about, which I always refer to as China POK economic corridor and not as China Pakistan economic corridor, because China Pakistan economic corridor legitimizes their holding of our areas. So I always mentioned to this as the China POK economic corridor. So the China POK economic corridor, where a lot of investments have gone in, there are two, three factors here. One is that while China is committed to green energy, it has no qualms in exporting polluting thermal plants to Pakistan or anybody who is on the BRI, which is again double standards. I will be clean, but I will ensure that whatever was polluting my country will be exported to Pakistan, Burma, wherever they are required. But the extent of help that it has given to Pakistan is limited. Analysis tells you that on high-tech investments, it is Chinese workers, Chinese engineers, Chinese supervisors who are sitting there. So the local population is only doing menial jobs. The same thing was the case with Sri Lanka. So that's something which angers the local population. And there were protests not only in Pakistan but even in Sri Lanka on some of the issues where they found that the as promised there were phenomenal amount of labor that would benefit. It has not happened. So coming to Sri Lanka, the Sri Lanka has realized that you cannot ignore a neighbor like India, who rushes to there with medical, with fertilizers, with tsunami. Any time that there is a crisis, India has always rushed to their help. Geography, hesitate by geography. Within 12 hours you are in Sri Lanka, and therefore, and with Hambantota they realized that this was something that was promised. They promised a moon, they didn't even get the star. So this is the situation, and the Rajapaksas had to be squarely blamed for the mess that they are in because they went the Chinese way. Apparently, a lot of money was made by the Rajapaksa family, and it did not reach the common man. So many of the freebie culture that came into Sri Lanka again is something that has devastated that country, and you can see the results of it. So that has made Sri Lanka also, change politically, choose a new dispensation. But the ground situation is that It's not going to improve in a hurry. So every country where China has had some role to play is realizing that it's perhaps not in their best interest to continue with the kind of engagements, which is predominantly a win-win for China and not so much for the countries where BRI is a destination. So that's a point that we need to remember all the time.
One last question. What is your assessment of Xi Jinping?
It's like this, he's a dynamic leader. We must grant him that because, from 2012 when he's come on, there are many of the initiatives which are taken up, and he's also quite proactive, come to think of it, obviously. But the dream was all about making China big. But when China has to be big, according to his assessment, Xi Jinping had to be the uh, unopposed leader for life. And he was already anointed the leader for life. So the CCP is important, and as everyone tells you that it's only a minority. The CCP is a minority in their country. Not everybody is a party member, but there's a minority that rules the country. That's been so since 49. So that's a long history of leaders. So he's only the third leader who's got this kind of a qualification to lead their country in the assessment. But any dissent, any form of dissent today, he's in a better position to control it because of the artificial intelligence, because of face recognition, because of the stringent measures that are employed, and because of the loyalists. And the narratives are being managed all the time. Whether remember, we just had the Tiananmen 33rd anniversary just the other day. Everything that even a prayer kind of a thing was stopped. So, it's very clear that the state has full control about every single individual because of the fact that the social credit systems and all that are linked to mobiles. You know what a guy is doing. So the entire thing is a police state. So, in an authoritarian state where there is a single leader, while there may be certain amount of dissent, with the number of lawyers that surround him, he is in a position to control the narrative. Whether there would be some kind of a revolutionary process that will come from within, we have to wait and see.
Well, thank you so much, Commodore. It's been an enlightening session with you on China today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice being here, and thanks you for the opportunity.